It was a cold December evening in Montgomery, Alabama, 1955. The air inside the city bus was thick, with exhaustion, with history, and with quiet defiance. When the driver barked his command, "Move," a small, tired woman simply said, "No." That single word would echo far beyond that bus. It would shake America from its sleep and ignite a movement that would change the course of history. Rosa Parks didn't raise her voice. She didn't lift a fist. But in her stillness, the world found its movement. Before Rosa Parks became a symbol, she was a seamstress, a woman of quiet strength, bound by faith and dignity. Her courage didn't come from anger, but from years of patience worn thin by injustice. Tonight, we journey through her story, not just the moment she refused to move, but the lifetime that led her there. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because every story like Rosa's reminds us, change begins with one ordinary person choosing to stand firm. Rosa Louise McCauley was born on February 4, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama, in a world still healing from the Civil War but unwilling to let go of its chains. Her parents, James and Leona McCauley, were hardworking people, her father, a carpenter, her mother, a teacher. When her parents separated, Rosa and her younger brother, Sylvester, moved with their mother to Pine Level, a small town outside Montgomery. There, the red dirt roads were lined with pine trees, and with fear. The Ku Klux Klan rode at night, their torches cutting through the dark. Rosa would sometimes lie awake listening to the hooves and the distant shouts, clutching her brother's hand until the noise faded. Her grandparents, former slaves, raised her to believe that dignity wasn't something given, it was something you carried, no matter how the world treated you. Her grandfather would stand on the porch at night, a shotgun in his hand, guarding the family home. And Rosa, even as a child, saw in his eyes what quiet courage looked like. At a young age, she attended the Montgomery Industrial School for Girls, a private institution run by black women who taught not just reading and sewing, but self-respect. They called their students ladies, and taught them that no one could make them feel inferior without their permission. Rosa's world was small: cotton fields, segregated schools, church hymns echoing through Sunday mornings, but her dreams were vast. She wanted a life where her worth wasn't measured by the color of her skin. Rosa's first taste of defiance came long before the bus. As a teenager, she refused to enter a segregated bus through the back door. The driver cursed at her and drove off, leaving her standing in the rain. That driver's name was James Blake, the very same man she would face again years later. But in that moment, Rosa learned something: the cost of dignity was often humiliation, but it was worth paying. She worked as a seamstress in a department store, stitching fine dresses she could never afford to wear. Her days were long, her wages small. But in the evenings, she found purpose beyond survival. Rosa joined the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP, becoming its secretary. There, she met E.D. Nixon, a local leader and organizer, a man who saw in Rosa not just grace, but quiet fire. Her work with the NAACP exposed her to the horrors few outside the black community wanted to see: wrongful arrests, lynchings, the daily erosion of human dignity. She recorded testimonies, helped victims, and sometimes, just listened. In those meetings, she found her voice. Rosa once said, "I had almost reached the point of being tired of giving in." That fatigue, that exhaustion, would soon become her fuel. The 1940s and early 50s in Montgomery were years of quiet oppression. Segregation wasn't just law, it was a way of life. Buses, schools, restrooms, restaurants, all divided by invisible lines drawn in cruelty. Every morning, Rosa watched white passengers fill the front of the bus while black passengers crowded in the back. If the white section filled up, the driver would move the sign back, forcing black riders to stand or get off. It wasn't just inconvenient. It was humiliating. Rosa endured it all: the whispers, the sneers, the forced smiles, until one evening changed everything. December 1, 1955. Rosa was 42. She had spent all day sewing at the Montgomery Fair department store. Her back ached. Her feet throbbed. As she boarded the Cleveland Avenue bus, she recognized the driver immediately, James Blake. The same man who had once left her in the rain. She sat in the first row of the colored section. But when the bus filled and a white man was left standing, Blake ordered her and 3 others to give up their seats. The others complied. Rosa didn't. The air turned heavy. Blake glared at her. "Are you going to stand up?" he demanded. She looked him straight in the eye. No. It wasn't a shout. It was calm, almost gentle. But it was the calm before the storm. Blake threatened her, called the police, and Rosa was arrested under segregation laws. As she sat in the police car, she felt no fear. She later said, "I thought of my mother, and my grandfather, and how they'd stood their ground. I knew I was right." Her arrest spread through Montgomery like wildfire. That night, E.D. Nixon and other activists gathered in her home, planning something that would shake the city to its core. On December 5, 1955, the day of Rosa's trial, the city's black community did the unthinkable. They stopped riding the buses. Thousands of men and women walked miles to work, church, and school. Some rode bicycles. Others carpooled. But the buses rolled nearly empty. The Montgomery bus boycott had begun, a movement sparked by one woman's refusal. And leading the newly formed Montgomery Improvement Association was a young pastor named Martin Luther King Jr. Rosa's quiet act had found its echo in his voice. The boycott lasted 381 days. Through rain and heat, through arrests and intimidation, the people held firm. Rosa became a symbol of their struggle, the face of ordinary courage. But the cost was high. She lost her job. Her husband, Raymond, was forced to quit his own. They received death threats. Yet, neither regretted a thing. When the Supreme Court finally ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional, Rosa stood as proof that one woman's silence could speak louder than 1,000 protests. But victory didn't bring peace. After the boycott, Rosa and Raymond found themselves blacklisted in Montgomery. No one would hire them. The constant threats wore them down. So, in 1957, they moved to Detroit, hoping for a fresh start. But the North was not the promised land they expected. Racism lived there too, just dressed in subtler clothes. Poverty followed them. Rosa took odd jobs, working as a seamstress again. For years, the world celebrated her name, but few offered her help. She once said, "People always say I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. But that isn't true. I wasn't tired physically, no, the only tired I was tired of giving in." In 1977, her husband passed away. Her mother followed 2 years later. For a time, Rosa withdrew from public life, living quietly, her small apartment filled with memories and mementos of a life that had changed millions but left her nearly forgotten. Yet history has a way of returning to those who shaped it. In the 1980s and 90s, the world began to honor her again, with awards, medals, and recognition. In 1999, she received the Congressional Gold Medal, America's highest civilian honor. Presidents called her a hero. Children learned her name in classrooms across the country. But for Rosa Parks, legacy wasn't about statues or ceremonies. It was about freedom, unfinished, ongoing, fragile. She remained humble, soft-spoken, always reminding people that she wasn't the first to resist, nor the only one. She was part of a larger story, of those who walked rather than ride, who stood when others bowed, who believed that justice could begin with a whisper. On October 24, 2005, Rosa Parks passed away at the age of 92. When her casket lay in honor in the U.S. Capitol, the first woman in American history to receive that tribute, thousands filed past, many weeping, some singing softly. Rosa Parks never sought fame. She simply wanted respect. And in doing so, she gave a nation back its conscience. She proved that change doesn't always roar, sometimes, it sits quietly and refuses to move. Like, share, and subscribe. And remember, courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a simple no whispered in the face of injustice.